New York City. It is the late 1980s, and David Letterman is at the height of his powers. Everyone wants to know him.
David Letterman is one of the United States' most popular television talk show hosts of all time.
David Letterman is the longest-serving late-night talk show host in American history. Over 6,000 episodes of his late-night talk show, surpassing even his mentor and hero, Johnny Carson.
He's a comedian, he's an entertainer, he's a broadcaster.
But one person wants to get closer to Letterman than anyone else.
She feels that she is his wife and she has a child by him.
This is somebody who is absolutely obsessed with him, fixated on him. Everything in her mind revolves around him.
But when fan worship becomes obsessive, things very often get out of hand.
She was a big admirer, but it just went way too far.
She literally stopped at nothing to get his attention.
David Letterman began his broadcasting life as a TV weatherman.
He started in Indianapolis. He was a weatherman, he was an anchor, he was a children's show host. He was also a stand-up comedian.
For over 20 years, he made his way to the very top of the American television industry.
I think David Letterman is so successful because what you see on stage is the exact same person he is in real life. He's self-deprecating, he's funny, he's charming, and almost shy.
At the peak of his career, he was making $35 million a year. He received 12 Emmys.
Even today, if he's walking on the streets of New York or LA, he's gonna stop. People love him. He's just a beloved figure in America and will always be.
By the 1980s, Letterman was one of TV's biggest stars. But celebrity can have a dark side, and for Letterman, it was a committed and obsessive stalker.
Stalking begins in an individual's mind. It starts as a fantasy. The fantasy develops into an obsession, and then following the obsession, the individual acts on it.
And the person who began to see David Letterman in this context was Margaret Mary Ray, also known as Peggy.
Margaret Mary Ray was born in Gracelake in Illinois in 1952. She was one of 4 children. She was a fairly middle-class family. Her parents were George and Loretta.
For all accounts, she seemed to be, a model child in a beautiful family. She was well-liked, popular, the light of people's eyes. She was very engaging and charismatic.
By all accounts of those who knew her, her mother and her friends, they said she was a very bright, articulate, intelligent woman who actually could have been anything that she wanted to be.
She ended up marrying a man called Gary Johansson and having 3 kids with him. Very normal beginnings for Margaret.
It appeared, however, that all was not well in the Ray family. Mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, had affected 2 of her siblings.
Schizophrenia is the genetic disorder. It tends to run in families. She had, I believe, 2 brothers that were schizophrenic, and that's a really bad sign. And it's a major illness. Schizophrenia has to be taken as seriously as could possibly be.
Her father, George, had suffered from schizophrenia from about mid-adolescence. He didn't take any medicine or receive any formal treatment for his schizophrenia, but he would have psychological breakdowns, and it seemed that he would treat it through his own coping through alcoholism and drinking, and that was his way of dealing with it.
Schizophrenia usually manifests itself in early 20s. In her case, I think it was a little bit later.
Unfortunately, Peggy's 2 brothers also suffered from schizophrenia.
Her brother Bill drove his car full speed into a tree, and then her brother David, who at only 22, poisoned himself with carbon monoxide. So they both died very young.
For her family, who was very close-knit, to have this happen to several of her brothers, you can imagine the pain that must have caused for her, because she had seen this happen not once, but twice, and knowing that the same thing could very well have happened to her too.
Despite the potential for stability, Peggy continued to behave erratically.
She had 4 children, and she would cook hamburgers, but she wouldn't cook them all the way through, and she would serve this to her children.
She would go out on a summer day wearing a heavy winter coat.
She would say, hey, I'm gonna make pancakes in one big blob as a pancake.
She would take rides with truckers who she didn't know.
She also would ramble on nonsensically about nothing for hours.
She would talk to herself. She would behave in a bizarre fashion.
She would drive her kids across country without telling anyone.
When she came back, she really had no reason for why she had done it. It was just, that was where her mind went. So she had some awareness that she was losing touch with reality, but at the same time, it's really hard for people experiencing these symptoms to be able to understand that they are losing control of their minds, that their mind is actually starting to fail them, and they don't have any control over it anymore.
It led to her divorcing her husband, and she actually lost custody of her children to her first husband, Gary.
But there was an additional condition to her illness lurking in the background.
It is not common for people with schizophrenia to stalk. Schizophrenia has no direct relationship to stalking. What does is a very, very small subtype, which is called delusional erotomania. It's a delusional belief where an individual really believes, that a person, typically of higher social status, is in love with them. Doesn't have to be a celebrity, but it could be a surgeon, it could be a judge, it could be, or just a wealthy businessman. And the belief is that that person is in love with them.
Not having any real anchor points, not having any real connections or people in her life, and that transient nature creates loneliness and isolation itself. So for Margaret, she would spend an evening watching David Letterman's show, and for her, every time he came on, she felt some form of attachment to him.
She saw him on TV, and she then developed a delusion based on him, a delusional belief that he was in love with her. This is very, very typical of delusional erotomania. You have to understand, this is not somebody who's just likes him, who's a fan of his, who wants to get to know him. No, this is somebody who is absolutely obsessed with him, fixated on him. Everything in her mind revolves around him.
She wanted to have the life that he led, and she convinced herself that she deserved it. And so she would stop at nothing to get his attention and to be in his life.
Margaret Mary Ray's pursuit of David Letterman, fueled by her erotomania, began to take on a whole new dimension.
She would go visit him, she would trespass to go see him. She would bring cookies, she would bring forget-me-nots and flowers.
Letterman's TV studio in Midtown Manhattan became a focus for her attention.
She would turn up at the studio, she would write to him prolifically.
Another time she left whiskey and candies or cookies in his foyer.
But it was when she began to look to visit his home, the matter began to turn sinister.
She was found sleeping on David Letterman's tennis court and left a book about mediation on the driveway.
One time, David Letterman woke up and she was in the bedroom.
Letterman did comment that it was more like odd than alarming.
Someone breaking and entering into your property is scary. Even if it's a woman, this is scary, creepy stuff. You're in bed at night, be you male, female, and your doors go in or your windows go in or someone has a key and they let themselves in and they appear in your bedroom. That is a very frightening situation because you do not know whether that person intends you harm.
In each of these cases, you can see that she was not trying to hurt him when she was going inside his property or inside his home. It was all about being close to him.
Peggy went a stage further, taking on a whole new persona at certain times.
In one incident, she was at David Letterman's home. David was not there, but some painters working on the house were. She convinced those painters that she was David Letterman's wife, convinced them to give her a ride to the train station.
Under the guise that she was Mrs. Letterman. But not to Margaret, though. It wasn't under the guise. It was that she genuinely was Mrs. Letterman.
She sounded very believable. Margaret could come across as intelligent, articulate, because she is intelligent and articulate. If she's there on his property, who knows? Maybe it's his wife. And so they went along with it.
And I think sometimes when people are lucid and they can explain things in a rational way, people don't really understand the significance of someone's mental health, that they still may be very unwell, but they may be able to be rational and lucid in some circumstances.
There's no evidence that she wanted to hurt him. I don't think David Letterman ever thought she wanted to hurt him. She just wanted to be near him. She was a big admirer, but it just went way too far.
Peggy had completely convinced herself of the relationship.
He's really in love with me, but he has to deny it publicly for his own personal reasons. He may be married to someone else, but he's not really married to that person. He really wants to be married to me. Keep in mind, this is not logical. This is not rational. This is delusional.
She literally stopped at nothing to get his attention.
But there was worse to come.